Greetings to everybody. This is Del K. Burton, and we are about family business in Chicago, United States of America. It is a great day to be alive and a great day to dive into, I think, one of the greatest conversations and collaborations of the 21st century. Just going to say hello to everybody and to everybody who has come and has heard the call to action. I do want to introduce Christina King, who is the brains and the energy behind everything that has been happening here. And I'd like her to introduce the speakers, introduce who's in the room, and we can take it from there. So, Christina King, if you will, we're in your hands.
Okay, hello everyone. Glad to have everyone here today to have a discussion about some of the things that are taking place in our country, and to have Dell be able to help to lead us in that and to help us with some effort. So we have some other folks here in the room as well. And here we go. Introduce yourself.
Denise Goring, and I've been watching you on YouTube, and I heard about the meeting, so I live in Chicago, so I decided to attend.
Thank you for coming.
Shalom. What's up, Dale?
Hello, sir. Hello. How are you?
Yeah, can you hear me?
I can hear you. Okay. It's the picture I don't see that well, but let people know who you are.
Yeah. So for your audience, I'm Prince Ami Young, one of the heads of the African Hebrew Israelites. I'm from Jerusalem, and also I'm a farmer, educator, and a friend of Dale's.
Absolutely.
Okay, I'm Charles Sanders. I've watched your videos and quite interested in what you have to say. And just thought and I'm a resident of the Chicago area, and thought I'd just come in and find out what's going on.
Thank you very much for coming through, Charles. We appreciate you.
Thank you.
Hello, I am Regina Porter. I am a farmer in the South Suburbs, and I am also with the Hebrew Israelites as well. And I'm just happy to be here and contributing to the discussion.
Thank you. It's great to see you.
Dell's gonna go first.
Huh?
Dell?
Did you?
I don't. That's everybody who's in the room?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. So, ladies and gentlemen, again, thank you very much for taking the time out of coming and being the first think tank, in the words of Bishop Sampson, the first think tank that has decided to put brain, muscle, and ingenuity to this very new and recent, I would say, eclipse of awakening that has taken place in the recent few months. If I can take some of us down a historical path, and then what we'll do is I'll have some commentary. We'll open up for questions. We'll have a little more commentary just to give us some structure, and we'll hopefully have a brainstorming session and then come up with some solutions. So if I can picture our conversation tonight in three pillars. Pillar number one is advocacy for Afro-Semitic communities in crisis, namely African American Hebrew Israelite community that is in Israel. And this community is symbolic of the age-old plight of the Black experience in the West. And so we're going to discuss them. The second great pillar that we have to discuss is what is our call to action? And our call to action for today is trying to formulate a strong, internationally and domestically recognized NGO that has the same teeth and the same financial wherewithal of another organization that is going to be the pillar number 3. And that organization is referred to as the Anti-Defamation League, the ADL. The reason that we have to identify organizations like the ADL is because what we have not been awakened to, I believe, in our plight to become a true nation in the West, whether it be in America or the Caribbean or South America or even places like Canada, is realizing the institutions that have literally been built to keep us in our place. So let me just take us down the garden path of pillar number 3. Let's go with that one first and have a quick discussion about the ADL. The Anti-Defamation League, we won't name it. We won't picture it as anything. Let's just tell a story. And approximately in the 1900s, the early 1900s, there was a gentleman who was a regular businessman, and his name was Leo Frank. And Leo Frank had the predilection to be sexually interested in young girls. And Leo found himself a 13-year-old girl and raped that young girl. He didn't only rape her, he murdered her. He didn't only rape her and murdered her, he attempted to blame the rape and the murder on a black man. Thankfully, and one of the rare occasions in Western history, is people were more interested in true justice than were interested in actually just pinning something on a person of ethnicity. And a court of his peers and proper investigation and eyewitness testimony by somebody who was actually an accomplice caused Mr. Frank to be not only arrested, but convicted. But Mr. Frank belonged to a very strong and very powerful community, an age-old community that understood the power of the deal, that knew how to work things from the back end. And Mr. Frank's community, after realizing that the member of their community, no matter what he's done, no matter how guilty as hell he was, and how insidious he was in respect to targeting the most vulnerable of any community, children, they decided to cut a deal with the governor. They decided that they were going to figure out a way to keep Mr. Frank from being killed, which was Georgia state law. He would have been executed. And that deal with the governor caused the sentence of Mr. Frank to move from death to simply life imprisonment. Now, we know how America was in the 1900s. There was another community that wasn't very happy about that decision. And they decided that old Leo wasn't going to get away with it. And they dragged Mr. Leo out of that prison cell and lynched him. Leo's community was a Jewish community. And the Jewish community felt that Leo's lynching and his consummate death and even his conviction, there was something wrong with it. And they chose within themselves to form an organization that would never allow members of their community to be victimized again, especially after the deal was cut. And the ADL is now formed, an organization tasked with making sure it protects the interests of Jewish individuals no matter what. And the story would be over there, and we would just have a very unfortunate historical picture of the early 1900s mindset of individuals who were not black but could pass as white. And the story would be something that we would look back at and say, yeah, that was just an unfortunate way of how this organization started. But since then, it's done great things. But this is what makes the story this much more pivotal for me, and I think pivotal for you, and pivotal for every individual of color in America. In the 1980s, the ADL did not see fit to leave good enough alone. And they sought out a pardon for Mr. Frank, a posthumous pardon for an individual who was convicted of not just pedophilia and raping a young girl, but murdering her too. And they essentially were successful. They were successful in getting a posthumous pardon for Leo Frank, almost 70 years after he was killed. This is what this means to me and what it should mean to you. That there are certain organizations that they will exercise their power even into the past, that they will not let any stone be unturned for branding them in a light that they do not wish to be branded in. And any community or any person that falls into the blanket of that organization is in a lot of trouble. And so this is how the ADL has started. This is how the ADL was formed. These are things that are sitting on their website. These are things positioned to show that this is the richness of their history. So what does that mean to us? And how does that affect us in our current lives and today? Well, the awakening of everything that's taken place was because of what we all know about the Kyrie Irving saga, where he was tweeting out a book and a film. And this didn't just awaken us to a particular community targeting one basketball player or one sports star. It awakened us to a conflict in our historical ancestry story of them, the Jewish community, and us. It also awakened us to the power that a particular commentary can have, how they can aggressively chase down their issue, even as they chased down the issue of Leo Frank 70 years after his death. They chased down a member of the Black community to make sure that he was labeled what he needed them to be labeled as. And I took exception at that and found that I can't understand how a community could be so strong, how a community could be so successful to chase down another member of our community and be successful in branding something that was actually impossible. The impossibility is now, according to the ADL and according to people who think like them, is that somehow Black people are in the same boat as white supremacists, that somehow Black people are in the same boat as Nazi Germany, that somehow Black people are in the same boat as those that they would refer to as their enemies, simply because we wish to identify by something that we find historically accurate. This is why we must begin a pilgrimage for proper information and for proper actualization. And this is what this meeting is about. How does the voice of a people who have lost their history, who have lost their languages, who have, and I wouldn't say lost, temporarily lost their way in the chronology of the human story and have arrived at this place and still are awakened to know who they are, how can those people be an enemy to anyone? And this is where we are sitting today. Why have we been called here today? We've been called here today because there is a strong social structure that is meant to keep certain people in their place, certain people out of the status quo, and it's meant to call us names of which we probably should never even have be associated with before. And so the ADL for me was a target organization where I should look to not just the Black community, but I must look to the Jewish community and say, is this organization an organization that you will pin your Jewishness next to and say, this is who we are? That's my first conversation to the Jewish community and to the Black community. Are we dealing with a Jewish community that we thought we were dealing with prior to this Kyrie Irving situation? Are we dealing with a community of individuals much different? Is the word Zionism what they say it is? Or is the word Zionism something completely different? And these questions pull at us when we look at our North American experience and see maybe the shades and the reflections of what look like allegiances from that same community, until our focus goes back to pillar number one, to Dimona. We look at Dimona and see a bunch of African Americans who 50 years ago decided that they were going to take the pilgrimage back to what they felt was their ancestral place, back to the place where they believe that they are people of the book, back to the very sands of beginning, and decide that they are going to paint the rest of their lives and the rest of their generations that come from them in the colors of historical biblical accuracy. They're going to become Israelites, not just in word, not just in name, not just even in culture or religious behavior. They are going back to the land. And they went back to the land without help. They went back to the land, and others can speak of it. I'm telling the story of other people who told me the story. And I don't have the right to tell their story, but I'm proud to tell the little bit that I know. And they've gone back to a land 50 to 60, almost 60 years. They've built it out. They've participated in the government. They've participated in the army. They participated in society. And still, after the promises were made by a community that will go back into history and make sure that their alleged rights or wrongs are righted. The promises were broken. And that community sits today as a community holding broken promises. How many African Americans in America are still holding broken promises? Promises that they were told that you will be part of us. You will be one with us. You will be not disenfranchised anymore. You are home. And that community sits today with 131 souls ready to be deported from a place that they consider to be home, back to a place where they have migrated from. There is no Polish Jew or Czechoslovakian Jew or Russian Jew or Ukrainian Jew who feels that one day, while they are sitting in Israel collecting a pension, while they're sitting in Israel under the protection of the Israeli army, while they're sitting in Israel surrounded by the intelligentsia of the Mossad and all of the accoutrements of the first world Israel life, none of them believe one day they will send me back to the poverty that I came from. One day they will send me back to the place that I came from prior to being repatriated. But these 131 souls sit there. They sit in a precarious position, a position where they are stateless, a position where they no longer really have any true ties to America other than a passport. And they sit there as people saying, this is our home, with a government and an attitude that says, no, it is not. If those people cannot be the target of our empathy, of our mercy, of our philanthropy first, then how can we look at ourselves and say we deserve anything here in North America? This is the beginning of a great awakening of not just information, but action. That within 25 days, a judge in Israel, minister of the interior in Israel also, can make a decision about people's lives that is absolutely the very definition of systemic and systematic racism. We can never sit here any longer and think to ourselves that the 21st century has arrived at a place where Black people are equal. We do not see the equality in the media. We do not see the equality in the organizations that have power, like the ADL, and we don't even see the equality in allies, such as the country of Israel, that is supposed to be an ally with the American. When will true equality happen? And this is what we're here to discuss. And my position is, it will happen when you take it. I'd like to open up the floor to see if any of the other panelists wish to say anything before I continue.
Well, that was extremely articulate about our journey. Again, I'm Prince Amiel, one of the leaders and founders of the original African Hebrew Israelite nation. And there are so many stories that come out of this situation. And one artist, his name is Gil Scott Heron, said at one point during our struggle that the revolution wouldn't be televised. And he was absolutely correct. The revolution couldn't be televised because we had other things that were more important, like feeding ourselves, staying alive, and protecting ourselves from the enemies that we encountered in Israel. So when uh, we left America because, first of all, America was toxic in every shape, form, or fashion. The psychology, sociology, the financial reality was toxic. Our homes were toxic. What we call neighborhoods were toxic. And to this day, they have become almost, most of these neighborhoods have become almost unbearable for our people. And we're way past critical mass. And I felt that at a particular point, we just decided that it would be better to take our lives into our own hands and uh, and move on out of America and pick ourselves up by our own bootstraps. It ain't like we had bootstraps, but you know, so goes the story. We picked ourselves up, went into Liberia premeditatedly to purge ourselves of enough of the ignorance and the negativity that we had accrued dealing with the slave scenario for 400 and some years. And we felt we couldn't go directly into Israel because we needed to take some time to get some of these things off of us that were causing us psychological and sociological problems. And when I say we went into Liberia, we went into the bush of Liberia. Wasn't no 7-Eleven, wasn't no grocery stores, wasn't no cars. You know what I'm saying? And we didn't even know that it was food all around us. So if it hadn't have been for some old Garveyites who had been there since the first experiment when the CIA and the FBI wanted to uh, sustain the presence in Liberia, which they eventually did come back later on. If it wasn't for the Garveyites, we would have starved. Matter of fact, about 1/3 of the people came home because they just couldn't take it. You talking about we were in an area where they had mambo snakes, the black mamba that Kobe's named after.
Right.
Right. Those snakes, they had driver ants that sometimes they grow like 2.5, maybe 3 inches, and they move in droves of millions. So when you hear them coming, the only thing you can do is find somewhere to get up out of the way because they eat everything in sight, and it sounds like a train coming. And so there were times that when we didn't know there was food everywhere, that and we didn't even have a dime to buy a some bananas. You know what I'm saying? I mean, we were really out there like that, but it was part of the psychological reality of redeeming ourselves. So it's like a junkie. When you want to get rid of the thing, you have to go through the withdrawals of the thing, right? So it was like that. And what you're getting is firsthand from me. So this ain't something that somebody told me. This is what we lived. But all of that was to prepare us to go into Israel. Uh, when I know you all remember when Martin Luther King had the speech in Memphis, his phrase was, "I may not get there with you, but we as a people will get to the promised land." He didn't say Israel because Israel wasn't even that old then. So there was no land called Israel. There was a people called Israel. But they knew that when Israel showed up on the map, we were gonna come there. Because now our name is on the map. So those are the revolutionaries, Pan-Africanists, all of us who have been working in different shapes and forms working to get ourselves out from under this Eurocentric domination, we came to the conclusion, okay, whatever we'll suffer, whatever it is to be free. And we knew that freedom was not free, but we didn't know everything that went along with it because it was totally experiential. So we didn't necessarily have a plan. And when I say a plan, we didn't have something like really mapped out like that. Most of us were biblically based, and the Bible was the book. And it got us through, because I mean, the Bible's a history book. And it's a history book of how our ancestors have been trying to bring a better world, or the idea of a better world, into existence. And all the opposition to the people of the book and the people of the land and the people of the Bible, all the opposition that came from all over the world to keep us from expanding the idea of a new heaven and a new earth spoken of in the 21st chapter of Revelation. So there was a way market, but we wasn't clear about how it was going to play itself out. We had to give in to the reality of playing it out, and we had agreed that whatever it took, we were going to stay the course. And as a result of that, in 1972, we achieved sovereignty. And a lot of my people are not geopolitical astute, so don't really know what sovereignty really means. But it really means that you are your own people, because we have a land that we squatted on when we went to Israel. We brought people in, we had babies, we developed culture, we developed arts, sports, psychological and sociological services for all our people who were repatriating to the Holy Lands. Now, because the name Israel, that's what caught our attention, because when you go back to the old churches, and in the old churches, when there was really no such thing as a black church, it was black people in a white church. When you go back to that, after the church was over, a lot of the preachers would go into private offices and they teach their people about being the people of the book of the Israelites. So this is like nothing new. It was just the revolution wasn't televised. And here we are today with smartphones and computers and all that kind of stuff. You can get to anybody in 3 or 4 seconds. Remember, we didn't have that. As a matter of fact, when we went into Israel, the only communications we had was payphones. And then we had payphones out here before cell phones, and a lot of people don't remember the pages and all of that type of stuff. But what we used to have to do, we had to go buy quarters and go to the payphone, and they would go to the payphone. And this is how we communicated with the Foreign Affairs mission that I was charged with, and the Central Reality in Dimona, Israel. So I'd have to put, and we had a lot of people doing shifts. I had to put the quarters in and keep going until I actually got in between all the calls that were being made at that time, dealing with our development internationally. So I just want to give you a little backstory of what Dell, articulated so well. But there are stories to this thing. Now we're beginning to be able to share these things with everybody. And so the real important thing is that we help educate our people to this reality. Because of this, we were the only people to ever do that, to run away from the plantation and don't come back or don't be dragged back. So when we left up out of here, we told them, we were dealing with all the security services, and we were straight up with them. Look, hey, ain't nothing we can do with y'all. Y'all do what y'all got to do. Just know that you're not going to stop us from doing this. And so we spoke to all the security services like that. But when we got into Israel now, and because we have to give deference to where deference is due, we thought that we went from one bad white people to another bad white people, because that's what we left out with. But what wound up happening after a time, the Israelis, Jewish people who lived in the cities, used to come to us and said that they had been inspired by the reality that they knew that the people of God were eventually going to come to Israel. And it was a very profound kind of awakening, because you can imagine we'd have told our children that these are bandits and demons and all that. And I have to give you a story. I don't know if Gary Dillon told you this story. Did Dale meet Gary?
I don't think I met Gary yet.
Gary Dillon was a rabbi friend of mine from Israel, right? But he didn't live in Israel. He lived in California, him and his family. But he was an Orthodox Jew or whatever. So I was introduced to him, and this is how I was introduced to him. The head of the Jewish minister who was in charge of social services or whatever. He was the Russian Jew. He asked us to put something together in LA so he could talk to Black businessmen about doing business with Israel. And so that was one aspect, but the other aspect is he was going to be, his name is Minister Sharansky, and he was going to make a presentation at the UCLA for the Jewish students, UCLA, right? So we all went with it. The place was packed, whatever. He said whatever he had to say. And then afterwards, we went to the green room. We all went to the green room together. So I had bought about 13 people there. And I was in the green room. They was out waiting on me in the auditorium. So somebody in the auditorium came into the green room and said, "Hey, Prince, your people, that's your people out there in the auditorium." I said, "Yeah." He said, "Well, you need to come out here because I think there was somebody harassing them." So of course I go out with the guy and I said, "Well, where are they?" He said, "Well, I don't see them." I said, "Well, when you see them, point them out to me." So about 2 minutes later, he came back. He said, "There he is, over there by the door." So I walked over by the door, and I'm electric. So I go over to the door. I put my hand out, grabbed his hand, and put my hand on top of his hand. And I said, my brother right here was telling me that you were harassing my people over there, like you were hollering at them or something like that." He said, "Oh, no." He said, "I was so happy that the Israelites was in the room. I couldn't contain myself." So right after he said that, his son came through the door, about 15 years old. And he took my hand, put it in his son's hand, and he said, "Son, I want to introduce you to our saviors."
Wow.
And we had a lot of that in Israel, those experiences in Israel. So all of our experiences wasn't crazy. We knew the difference between the lay people and the people of the government, because we did have problems with people of the government. We have it up to today, which is what Dale was alluding to, because now they want to put, based on the technicality, they want to put 130 Israelites out. But I wrote a book, and it's called Free. It used to be called War, Destiny, and Freedom, about the experience. And what I say in the book, it's based upon the 6 or 7 degrees of separation, whichever one you believe in. Somebody in your family took part in the development of the African Hebrew Israelite nation of Jerusalem. And because the revolution wasn't televised, you wouldn't even know. But I can come now and straighten out the record that your families were involved in this. If you go down that line, if you canvass your family, you found somebody had an affinity, a relationship with Israelites or whatever, because you know, you go back in history, there were South Side Israelites, there were West Side Israelites, and there was a polarization, but at a particular point in time, there was a very intelligent brother who brought them all together and said, hey, it was time for us to get out of here. And it was a very unpopular position at that time because everybody thought some people thought we was running away from the struggle. Other people thought that we would, we didn't know what we was doing, all that kind of stuff. But now I'm sitting here today, and your people are in Israel in power as much as we can be for given the circumstance. Because we didn't go to Israel to just be people. We went to Israel to establish a landmark of freedom so that what we could do is show people how to become free. First of all, to understand the concept of freedom. So I'm not going to take up any more time. I just wanted to add that to the equation because it's your people they're messing with. But Kyrie Irving is your people. Ye is your people. Craig Hodges is your people. Now, I don't know if y'all know about Craig Hodges, the number one three-point shooter in the world. And Jordan says he couldn't have won the championships without him, right? But Craig, if y'all remember, one championship they won, he went to the White House dressed in all-white culture and delivered a message to the president to let his people go. Now, he paid a heavy price for that. But since the revolution was televised, everybody don't know how to process these things like that. Because you talking about Martin Luther King, Malcolm X, we were all engaged in the enemy. It wasn't like we was passive or whatever, you know what I'm saying? But a lot of things, not just assassination, but also psychological operations. And psychological operations is the most damaging because you don't really see it coming. But with that said, I just wanted to add that to the equation, Dale.
Thank you very much.
So that our people know we're alive and well. And we want to tell the story. And we want y'all to come to Israel and be a part of the fabric and everything because we're not playing. And they knew we wasn't playing. But we come out of you.
About how many are there now?
Maybe about 3,500, 3,700 to 4,000 at certain points in time. And so they're trying to get rid of 130. There's a political glitch that brought that into the equation. But depending upon the government at the time, some governments just sort of backed off of it. But they just had Netanyahu's back in office. So now he's got a guy that is sort of guaranteeing to everybody that they're going to put the 130 out. So what Dell and Sister Christina have graciously done is put it and begin to put it so that our people will take their place in the struggle. Because if we were free and they defeat us, what chance does anybody stand? Because up until that point, nobody had dared to leave America. Our people hadn't dared, so they were suffering and surviving in this context, which we're still doing today. And it wasn't 70 years ago, we was hanging on trees. You know what I'm saying? So here we are, they shooting brothers in the back. The sisters now, you know what I'm saying? So there's nothing inculcated in the experience that said it's going to get any better for us. Yeah, we hope and pray and we do all of that, but at the end of the day, we had to establish our own. And what has happened, we established it enough that we can replicate it, we can teach you about it, you can become involved in it, and the Hebrew Israelite scenario is not a religion. It's a character. You judge a tree by the fruit that it bears. And the Hebrew is just one who has crossed over from one state of mind to a higher state of mind, from one condition to a higher level of condition. And then that means that now you can build something markedly different, and you don't have to use white people as an excuse for not doing it. So I give it back to you, Bill.
Thank you very much, Prince Amiel. Listen, let's just make a couple of definitions real quickly, that just so people can understand. I think there's a new Pan-Africanism, and for those who don't understand Pan-Africanism, if I can just put it in its simplest terms, a mindset that all people of color, irrespective of religion or creed, share the commonalities of being alienated by race, and therefore should seek a place, potentially some people thought, outside of America for their own particular safety, security, and prosperity. But if I can give us an updated version, because many ideologies have competed with Pan-Africanism for this reason. The Christian has said, I'm a Christian before I am a black person. I am a Christian before I am an Israelite or a Jamaican or a Trinidadian. I'm a Christian before everything, because the concept of Christianity, it is something of citizenship outside of this world. We are not of the world. We are in the world, but we are not of the world. And so when compared to Pan-Africanists, the historical commentary of the Christian is, that's not my thing. I don't like it, because it forces me to re-identify something that I feel is connected to God with something that is connected to my terrestrial temporary existence. If I may offer, Pan-Africanists are what I would like to call now is Afro-nationalism. Afro-nationalism is not something that separates us from our faith. It is something that makes us realize that our communities, wherever they are, whether they are in Israel, whether they're in Libya, whether they're in Africa, whether they're in the West, those communities are marginalized not by their ideologies. They're marginalized by a collective mindset that we are all monolithic, we are all so-called black. And the same reason the Jew felt he needed an anti-defamation league is the same reason, and actually much more, than the communities of Afro-Hamitic and Afro-Semitic people need to recognize that we require a nationalistic voice and force to protect our communities all over the world. And so when we speak and we hear the Prince talk about the struggles of those people, some of us might say, well, that's because they decided to do that. I'm not doing that. He has identified to you that the marginalization that he still dealt with was similar to the same marginalization that others were dealing with in the West, because they were not being entreated by their newfound faith, their newfound ideology. They were being entreated by what it looked like and who they looked like. And once we understand that, we now must understand that some things are simply not going to change, and we require to protect ourselves wiser and more specifically. And this is the specifics that we're getting to right now. When you're creating something to protect yourself, it does not make sense to create a wooden weapon when everybody else is fighting with iron. It also doesn't make sense to keep fighting with iron weapons when everybody has moved on to bronze. It doesn't make sense to keep fighting with bronze weapon when they have moved on to steel. We must make sure that as we are formulating an old conversation, we must formulate it with new ideas. And so this is why the conversation of this NGO, this entity that is set up to not just deal with the disparity of wealth that has taken place historically, but to also deal with advocacy and deal with justice. But how does it build? How does it look like? What does it look like? We know it looks like the ADL. It looks like an organization that has the capacity to talk to government. And for many of you that have been listening to me, they think I may be too focused on this organization, but I've gone down the rabbit hole of the ADL. And I've looked at it from not just a place of scrutiny. I have almost looked at it like the Apostle John looked at the woman riding the scarlet beast and wondered after the beast. Because the ADL has positioned itself in a way that I say, if we are building something, if we are putting something together as a community, and it's short of a nation, if it's short of a constitution, if it's short of a military presence, it sure as hell better look like the ADL. So we have to get into a little bit of a description of what I'm saying in respect to this, because we have to know what to do after this meeting. It's not just to sit down and listen. We've heard better speeches than I or the Prince can give. We've had some of the greatest orators of history speak to us, and their speeches still remain, but yet we are still in the same place. So there must be a conversation that is had, and there must be a mobilization that is had that's now current. There must be a better machine that is built, and that machine must look like the ADL. The ADL, number one, the director of the ADL, and this I'm bringing us up to speed. Some of these things I've already been told, but I have new information for you. You're not going to hear the old thing. But some of us don't understand it, so I have to say it again. Jonathan Greenblatt served with the Clintons, and he served with Obama. He had an inside track to sitting down with two different presidents and establishing his rhetoric in the ears of the highest government of the land. So number one, we must have access to federal government officials. Must be in those positions. That's how the ADL has been built. It was built currently of individuals who had connection to presidents, historically of individuals who had connection to governors. You must have the ear, and you must have the extended arm of federal or at least state government officials. That's how the ADL is put together today. The ADL is also on their website. Actually, it's not on their website. You can look this up. James Comey, the former director of the FBI, thanked the ADL, I believe it was in 2014, and said, thank you for training over 12,000 FBI agents. The ADL doesn't simply just have a tertiary surface relationship with government. It trains government. Its analysts, as they are called, train government officials on not just how to identify domestic terrorists or international terrorists, but how to make sure they identify individuals who would target their community. We must begin again to teach how to treat our communities better to law enforcement. An organization that does that is an organization that we have to build. Not only does the ADL do that, the ADL has put itself in a position where giving money to it can actually make the donor wealthy. They have wealth programs on their website of annuities that can be put together so that when you start giving to this particular organization, you're actually increasing your wealth. They have financial strategists that make giving to the ADL not something that is simply just, again, philanthropy. It is actually sensical to your bottom line. They have built it in such a way where it makes more sense to support it as a Jew than it does to not support it. And so we have to construct something that not just brings the capacity for justice, but brings the capacity for financial and economic empowerment for those that would support it. And so the organization that I've put and a name that I've put out is Association of World Justice. Something that I believe our legal minds and the legal minds of our first army are where we need to start. And somebody I pinned it up here for a while. Our first army is an army of lawyers. And this is Christina King's words. An army of lawyers that put together this organization so that it is an ironclad organization that functions in a way that will forever be the microcosm of a nation, the microcosm of a nation. If we can't have an army, if we can't have a constitution, we need to have an NGO that operates as a nation, that speaks as a nation, that has the capacity to have communication with our partner nation, the United States of America. This NGO must be the first thing that we sit down and make sure that we have. I wanted to have it for this meeting so I can say that we've already have it done. But it is the first step before we can ask people for money, before we can send aid. There has to be a vehicle. There has to be an instrument. There has to be a weapon that we're using to make sure that our force is felt everywhere in the world. And this organization is that force, similar to the ADL. And so I will open up the floor also to individuals to have the conversation of how something like that they would see it to be structured. I don't know who's in the room with you, Prince, but how an organization with that to be structured. We have a lawyer, we have a set of trustees that we're looking for, we have an accounting firm that we're hoping to oversee those funds. But I'll open up the floor to suggestions just to make this a community initiative. This structure must have the right people at the table. You can't put this together with Pookie and Ray Ray sitting as the trustees. You must have the right people at the table from the very beginning of this organization for it to be taken seriously. It cannot only be an American sitting at the table of that organization. It should be an organization put together with people of the Afro-Semitic and Semitic and Hamitic community who are not just citizens of the U.S., it should be an international group that is put together to oversee this organization. Again, I open up the floor, and I will also take some of the comments in the comment stream, and I'll open up the floor to those that are in the room. Can we talk about this NGO? The name that I put forward is the Association of World Justice. Something that doesn't just target one community, but we know it has a mission for that community. It will reach anywhere in the world where we find marginalized communities are. It will focus on communities of ethnicity that have no representation. The Palestinian has representation. The Jew has representation. The Black American has no representation. And this is something that I believe, and the Black Canadian also has no representation unless we go back to the lands of which we identify with. But this is something that I think needs to be the first brain trust of building any nation, of how an NGO like this should be structured, who should be potential individuals in the community who sit there, and who should be the partners of this organization. In closing, for this part, this organization will also reach out to communities that have targeted us. And we will say this to them. This is your opportunity to now become a true ally to us. If you are a contributor to this organization and you are listed as one of the contributors to this organization, this is proof that you are interested in the economic and the furtherance of the Afro-Semitic and Afro-Hamitic people domestically in America and abroad. It will be a test, a litmus test to who truly is the friend of the Black community. Something they can look at and point and say, aha, if you don't support that, I know you don't support me. I open up the floor.
What name did you give it?
The Association of World Justice, AWJ.
Okay, and then I heard AGO.
An
NGO.
So an NGO is what it is. And if anybody else wants to define or look or say, you can. But an NGO is basically a non-government organization It is an international or a national foundation or charity that does the work of humanitarian work or any types of advocacy work domestically and abroad. It can take funds outside of the country where some charities aren't allowed to do that. It can also send money outside of the country and keep its status where some charities aren't allowed to do that. It can take government money. Some charities cannot do that, or foundations cannot do that. And it is supposed to be a humanitarian type organization that reaches out to all peoples and will not necessarily stigmatize or marginalize other people by its giving, but it will have a focus of who it represents first.
Can I make a brief?
Yes, yes. So I have a comment here. Can you just say who you are so the panel can hear you? He's on the Zoom, and I'd like to open the floor to him. Who's speaking?
This is Second Exodus.
Second Exodus. Okay, go ahead.
I
was thinking A&M.
to stop
Can you hear him?
information.
Yeah, well,
Sorry, we lost
it's
that.
open. It's not written in stone, so you can make the suggestion.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, go ahead. I'll try to put you closer to him.
NGOs webpage to stop the defamation of the Jewish people into secure justice and fair treatment to all. I want to highlight the importance of their identity as Jewish people. I think the first thing we have to do is to identify ourselves other than Black, because that has a legal it has legal ramifications if we don't redefine our identity away from Black, if that makes sense.
Prince.
And so in order,
Okay, go ahead. Sorry, go ahead a second.
Who's speaking?
in order to
Just somebody online.
get the monies that we need and support, we need a connection to a motherland, if that makes sense. So a lot of us, if we take in our DNA, a lot of us trace back to Igbo.
Mhm.
That's a direct connection to a land and a people. And so if we went to court and we said we want to declare mistreatment of a group of people, then we have a direct lineage and a tie to another group of people that we can establish links with. Does that make sense?
I hear you. What happens to the Afro-Latino though, with that, with when we try to make it a genetically based qualification for, or
Well, we would be sort of going backwards, Dale, because the word Afro is also a limited connotation as it relates to genetics, because it's like most of us know, especially Pan-Africanist revolutionaries, they already know that the landmass was named after the Romans conquered the land and named it after Africanus, which it became African after that. Now, we could discuss that, but I wouldn't necessarily go all the way to African, because when we're talking about people of color, if you didn't come over in boats and chains in America, it meant you was already here. And if you already here before the Europeans came in 1492, the whole world was tribal. So it was all about tribes. So if you didn't come over and change boats, you were already here. All you had to do is talk to your elders and find out what tribe you came from. So now what does that mean? That means when we say people of color, we can't leave ourselves out, because it was the Europeans who created the wedge between what you would call native people and so-called African Americans or slaves or whatever, they created that scenario. I remember one time one of the great black writers said he was watching a movie with a bunch of people, a cowboy movie, and they was killing the Indians, and somebody said, "Wow, they sure killing a lot of Indians." And it was Baldwin. He said, "No, they killing you." So my point is that if we're gonna correct things, let's go on and correct them. Now, for a lot of us who are biblically based, there was a place called Eden or Eden, and it was called Eastward in Eden. And the reality of it was that it was 24 nations from the Nile to the Euphrates, all the way down to the blue and white Nile at the tip of Uganda at Lake Victoria, which used to be called, had an African name, in the Lake of God. That was eastward in Eden. But there was a westward in Eden, which included Ghana, Mali. We had the southward in Eden, which included South Africa and all the nations that comprise what we call in that landmass Africa. But Africa doesn't do it. It doesn't do it authentic justice. And I'm only saying these things because if we're gonna exhaust and we're gonna be authentic, then let's get authentic as we can be, because it's a teaching moment.
Elder.
I have a question. So if all life started in Africa,
One moment.
okay, so what's wrong with?
No, but
No.
but that's my point.
Okay.
All life didn't start in Africa because Africa was a name that Europeans put on the continent. Before that,
Okay, so what was the name before that?
well, some
But all human life started over in that continent.
that started over in that continent.
Okay,
But
and then
Europeans
from
named
there.
But Europeans named the continent. So if we were going to be authentic, we
Mhm.
wouldn't use what the Europeans
Okay,
had created.
So what would we use?
But can I say this one thing? Even if black people were on the moon, they still wouldn't be protected. So the issue isn't where we draw our indigenous origins from right now. Our
Mhm.
issue is the fact that regardless of where we draw our indigenous origins from, we are still treated the same way. So defining us,
I know, Dale, but what we're doing right now, which was brought up, what are we naming it? And all
yes,
I'm saying,
yeah,
if we go,
and this is the mistake. This is the mistake I think we're making. And on second X's, I'll let you jump in. There is no such thing as a monolithic group called black people. If we went to Australia and saw what the Australian looked like, the original Aboriginal Australian looked like, that was a very black person. He's Australian. We know there's black people who come from India and the Mongols. So to call us, to try to collect ourselves in a one monolithic category is anthropologically incorrect. And that should not be.
but that's what you do if you use the word black.
He didn't.
Well, I'm using it. I'm using the word
Or any
because
title. We just trying to come up. The discussion was coming up with a name. Now, all I'm saying is that I would argue for authenticity. Somebody else would argue with this or argue with that, but it's not an argument. What was put on the table was that, so we're exhausting that. You understand? Because we got to
I
call
agree.
it something.
I agree. Second Exodus, my position is that defining blackness is not a priority, because I can define myself, you can define yourself, but we both know we share the same plight, standing in the same land under the same colonial oppressor, or under the same stigma. If he's not oppressing us, the same stigma. If he's not stigmatizing us, the same imbalance. So we are not the same because we share origin or we share ideology. We are the same because we share the same victimization. That's my point. Anybody can jump in.
Well, I guess both points are valid. Because if we're gonna put something on the table, we gotta agree what gets put on the table. That's all I'm saying.
We don't. We share in a collective persecution,
Right.
which is what's motive. Is that right?
That's what I'm trying to say. Yes.
What I'm saying, and Queen Lioness of Israel is she kind of encapsulated what I'm trying to say, is that the legal term of Black, African American, colored person, Negro does not protect us collectively. And I think there was a question asked earlier about what about the Afro-Latino?
Yes.
Well, genetically speaking, we are related to the Afro-Latino and those in the West Indies.
Absolutely.
And so that's a commonality. And that's something that the Ashkenazi Jews do themselves. They go, they check the DNA of different people, and they say there's a genetic connection, therefore you can make aliyah, or therefore you can receive these benefits because you are connected to the Jewish people. And so instead of, we are actually a lot more related than what we have been told otherwise. The tribes that they're talking, and this is why history is important. We need the academics to retell our history based on the academic sources that are made available to us today. And you'll see that the Yoruba and the Igbo and the Mbundu from Angola, you'll see that these people are genetically related. And you'll see that the missionaries, the educated missionaries back in the day, that when they were going to the central coast of Africa, they were specifically targeting a group of people. And they happened to be, and this is my observation, they happen to be all genetically the same, just with different cultures, but they're genetically connected. And that's the argument that I'm making here, is that we have to reconnect with those ethnic identities back in Africa, so that we can build a case to take it before the American courts, the governments, and say, this is the history, this is the identity of the people, we are related to them genetically, this is what the history books are saying. And of course we have every other record, because our plight for reparations has been well detailed. So, but we have
and
to
also this is artifacts. This is what artifacts are saying.
And the educational conversation is extremely valid, but this is where I like to give us an analogy. If there's an enemy knocking on the door, he's trying to kick in the door, and you and I are standing in the dark, knowing that the minute he walks in that door, we're both in trouble. We are not comparing DNA. We are not comparing racial origins, because we share the same issue. There's an enemy knocking on the door, and he's trying to come in. And so what I'm saying with this organization, we who are in the room can make those predeterminations ourselves. When we form an NGO, we don't have to go to the government and say, hey, we want to show you that we are from the same ethnicity. We're not trying to do that. We're trying to say, we are going to put together this NGO. And we are going to now try to reach the people who are vulnerable. Ourselves, we're going to predetermine who are our brothers. Ourselves. So the educational component definitely should be part of it. But the activism component is the reason we're here. The reason that we have been awakened isn't because we were educated into it. It was because we were agitated into it. And so therefore our agitation has demonstrated that there are individuals who are also suffering agitation, and their vulnerability should come before our self-determination. We know we're in the room and they're kicking down the door. So that's all I'm saying. I am not disqualifying the validity of investigating the educational component. I'm asking us, what should come first? In my opinion, The formulation of it should come first. The partnerships of how we are seeking to get it before, whether it be the Black congressional group, whether it be before government, governors. It's not about necessarily an educational experiment or an educational discovery first. It is an advocacy holding our hands and saying, we need to make a wall because something has been coming against us for far too long, and we have some people to help. That's my position of order of this, in my opinion.
Del, one of the things that I'd like to suggest that, I've been working with the Black and Jewish communities for the last 15 or 20 years, and been working diligently to have the kind of discussion that Kyrie and Kanye actually did on a huge national and world stage. So many people who I've been interacting with for many years were coming and talking to me and saying, well, what do you think about this? And for me, I was happy about it because this is the conversation I was hired by many of the Jewish organizations to reach out to the African American community and to have many of these discussions. Now, the discussion that happened is like, it wouldn't have been the way that I would have necessarily done it, but the good thing about it is that it put everything on the table. And, in my opinion and in my work for these 15 to 20 years, our greatest ally has been the Jewish community. Now, I know that it's similar to some of the sentiments that Prince Amiel just made. So for myself, when I learned about the community in Dimona, which even in doing this work, I didn't know anything about, and if I did, it was very peripheral. But when I learned about it, I said, hey, I was one of the people who helped on behalf of Jewish organizations to reach out to the African American community. And the hundreds, even thousands of people from the Jewish community that I've worked with and done things with have been people of reason, people who have come alongside the African American community. My studies in this began with, really studying the civil rights movement and the relationship between the Black and Jewish community. And when I started to see your discussions online, I was fascinated because it started out with basketball, right? And then this whole discussion going into Israel, the Hebrews, Christianity, myself as a Christian, probably the least woke Black person in America, grew up in Northern California, and then went to Duke University, and then working, like Kyrie. But to me, one of the things that was interesting in this is that nobody expects to be suddenly put in the middle of some big storm where all of a sudden that you have to, this young man, and working with some of the organizations that I have with young people who was seeking out his identities, learning about his heritage. And what brings me to tears, even this morning, and in my heart in tears, is that a young person who is coming out of the population of people, of enslaved Africans, whose identity, culture, all of those things was stripped from them, now looking into those things, and somehow, because of that process, got attacked on a world stage. That was total confusion to me, because all of the Jewish people that I know are the people who have helped me to understand about the importance of identity. It's been their culture, their identity that kept them. The things like the Shabbat, where they say that the Jewish people keep Shabbat, but they say no, This is the Shabbat that keeps the Jewish people, traditions, cultures, the families that were intact, those very things. And in my experience and in the work that I've done, the Jewish community has come alongside the African American community to, you know, I'm not going to mention the organizations, but powerful organizations organized and who reached out to the African American community and opened up all kinds of opportunities to learn about Israel, learn about foreign policy, learn about identity. And from there, so I'm very confused by some of the things that have happened. But I also, as we take note, it hasn't always been the members of the Jewish community that have been canceling in this cancel culture. And so one of the things I'd like to suggest, and when I reached out to you, because when I saw the platform that was being raised up in the depth of the conversation, I just wanted to come and add to you many different leaders and many different people who over these years that I got to meet both in Israel, in the United States, and all over, who've been deeply involved with this issue, so that there would be depth and substance and the right kind of leaders that would be adding conversation, that would be the kind of guests and people that you could add to the conversation. And I still deeply believe, and people can, think, everybody accuses me of my naivety and my little kumbaya, whatever, but that's who I am. So I believe, and I have worked for 15 or 20 years with a Jewish community that has come alongside the African American community, a Jewish community that, like the ADL, in some things, I always remind Black people, we've only been out of, Jewish slavery was 3,000 years ago. We've only been, out of slavery around 200 years. So give us a little bit of time in some of these things and some of the accomplishments. But some of these, so as the example, like of the ADL, I'm of the mindset, let's go sit down with some people who have been our friend. Let's sit down and ask them to first start out coming alongside by asking for their assistance and their help. And so, because that's the Jewish community that I know. Now, I'm learning other things, and I was very surprised because I'm thinking this, if I'm any community, and Kyrie Irving, who is intelligent, talented, rich, superstar, I'm gonna be happy that he found out that he's one of us. So I was absolutely confused I'm still absolutely confused at some of the response. And, I want to encourage all of the people, because sometimes we stay in our silo. Sit down with people in your community. We're having a dinner tomorrow with people from the Jewish community to sit down with what's happening right now and to say, okay, help me understand. And because the Jewish community I know is people who of wisdom, of the Bible, of reason, and who have been partners and allies of the African American community in a way. And I'm going to go. My studies began in looking at the civil rights movement, of which they were a great ally. And so one of the things I just want to remember and to have us champion is really what the Black and Jewish community have done together. And that part of the place we need to start, and especially in this nation, in this world, is bringing people together. Now, I'm not the great protector or whatever. So, people who, as you said, I believe deeply that the kind of organization you're talking about is very important for the Black community and for Black people all over. And I still believe that one of our greatest allies in bringing that together will be to reaching out to our allies in the Jewish community.
Thank you very much. And for those who don't know, Christina is the reason that most of these great interviews that you have seen, I would never have been able to do them without her. She has opened up her treasure chest of relationships that she has had with the Black community and the Jewish community, and she's really been a powerful force in making sure even myself has had the resources to have proper perspective, and she's been, I would say, an incredible supporter to the community in Dimona, and her when she says it, it takes it, you people should sit down and listen to it. And I know some folks don't understand the fullness of what she's bringing to the table in respect to her perspective, but you should sit down and listen to it. And what I got from that is this: that there's the religious Jew, the individual who is focused on his dogma. There's the compassionate Jew, the individual who's focused on the virtues of his God. And then there's the secular Jew. And the secular Jew and the religious Jew have too much in common from my experience. Jewishness, from the secular Jew, he identifies hopefully with something that he's trying to find, a Jewish gene. Next, he identifies with the Holocaust. And number three, he or she identifies with the state of Israel for Jewish people. That's what the secular Jew focuses on. The religious Jew focuses on that they are the people of the book, that they hold the laws and the ordinances of Torah, and that they live, and that lives within them. And then you have the Jew that is focused on his God, and he is the virtuous Jew, the AKA Good Samaritan Jew, the Jew that says that if a Black person needs to walk and boycott in the 60s, I'm going to join him. The Jew that says, maybe we just need to sit down and have conversations and see where we can see eye to eye. I will help him. So the same way I said earlier that Blacks, Africans, Afro-Semitic, Hebrew, we're not monolithic simply because of pigment or melanin. I will never put the Jewish community in a one monolithic category. We're not fighting the entire Jewish community, and we're not fighting them. What this entire thing started was I felt they were fighting us, and I said very clearly, they shouldn't pick that fight. I think, again, if that Jewish community that you have known for so many years wants to prove what they have shown to you and what you have said on their behalf, all they need to do is walk across the street and say, what do you want to start? The Association of World Justice. What's it going to do? It's going to help Israelites. It'll help people in Israel. Yes, it's going to help the Dimona communities in Israel. It's going to help marginalized Black people all over the world, even people in America. Yes, we have no problem being part of that. And so I think everything that you said absolutely can apply. But the question is, will a community walk across the street and look us in the face and tell the truth? I said this earlier, and I had this conversation with you, and I had this conversation with others online. Can the Jewish community honestly say, the whole Jewish community, can it honestly say that it has been an ally to the Black community? We have to redefine what ally looks like. No Black person has ever enslaved a Jewish person from the 1800s to now. We have never put the Jewish person in a position where he was marginalized by us. That is something that is on their side of the table. Have Jewish economic relationships between Blacks and Jewish people been equitable and 50-50? Because that's what an ally is. Not necessarily fair, but has it been 50-50? I would say that if they put the business together, they got the lion's share. So new definitions of what an ally looks like, I think it's time to have those conversations. You have a place that Europe gave you to be safe. It's called the State of Israel. There are African American Hebrew Israelites there who are looking to be safe? Are you making them safe there? Be an ally. Make those people safe. Within 25 days, pick up a telephone, call your local whoever, and let these people who have served in your armies, who have developed your land, who are true allies with Israel, take care of them. There's only 131 of them. Take care of them in 25 days, and then you will prove what Christina King said about you, that you have been a partner to the Black community. And I think if they're not willing to do those small things, sorry, this is the last one. Take Black faith groups off the list of the ADL. Just go into your little computer system and take the names down. Do the small things so we can believe you when you've said, I've had a 20-year relationship with these people and they've been fair, they've been good. I've seen them as wise. I've seen them as people that I can trust. Okay, we're saying to them, this young lady has put she's put her word, she's put her mouth on you. Don't let her down. Do these small things, and we will be able to come back to the table and say, the Jewish community wants to be a partner with us. I open the floor. I have a couple of more pillars. I don't want us to go past 2 hours. I have about 15. There's 250 people on this live, just so you know the amount of people that are actually coming in. The other thing, so the NGO, I think we're going to have to table it as to how that gets put together. That's a conversation with lawyers. That's a conversation with the founders and trustees. There's another pillar to this that I would like to address. It's the last, and that pillar is advocacy. And
okay, I'd like to enter something to the equation before we go into the advocacy, because I want to shed another light. I'm also reading from my book, Free, and it's not because these are the things, our accomplishments that I want to put in everybody's hearing, because they don't know how far we went. As a sovereign. First of all, being sovereign is that puts you in the center of the whole geopolitical world. So we were able to talk to leaders all over the world and still are able to do that. And so I want to read something in my book. It's on page 148. It said, I just wanted to give a few examples of the victories that were achieved by the African Hebrew Israelite nation of Jerusalem, not just in Israel, but all over the world. It says, as the naysayers and enemies of our work do all they can to tear down what we accomplished, we are not remiss to remind everyone that freedom is not free. And we paid and are still paying the price for that freedom. Number one, we extricated ourselves from America, meaning physically we left America. Number two, we went into Liberia in the bush for 2.5 years to purge ourselves as much as possible of the negative energy and behavior from the slave experience in America. I'd say that was a victory. Our population went from 39 in 1967 to thousands in 2018. I would say that's a victory. We have created our own health system based upon agrarianism, veganism, sustained through and past 2018. I would say that was a victory. As a matter of fact, at one point in Israel, there was a Jewish scholar that wrote a book about Israel. And when he came on tour, at the end of his discussion, he said, one thing about the Hebrew Israelites, the African Hebrew Israelites, we had never met anybody as resilient as us. Now, he said we created our own health system. We established a thriving clothing industry in harmony with our cultural needs and dress codes. That means we made everything that we wore, anything, the jewelry, the underwear, the whole 9 yards. And we also established an international jewelry industry. We have not only established a chain of vegan restaurants around the world, we have inspired thousands of vegan food enterprises globally. and are the forerunners and pioneers of the vegan movement the world is experiencing today with an unprecedented impact. Matter of fact, many of you know of the Soul Vegetarian Restaurant, which is the oldest vegan restaurant in America. We established a book publishing company called Communicators Press to print our own materials. We have established a working social system and model based upon the economic ideal of all things common. It was a victory. Our community has created and established a music industry, producing our own songs with recording studios around the world to service our music industry. This industry has produced a litany of content from CDs to albums, cassettes. I'd say that is a victory. Our musicians have written thousands of songs and jingles for various projects spanning 50 years. Our House of Life birthing center delivered thousands of our own babies in the span of 50 years. We created our own educational system, termed dedicational system, and taught our own children from early childhood to continuing education, secondary to collegiate, termed the Kingdom School of Holiness and the School of the Prophets. We transported and repatriated over 5,000 people to Israel and settled them throughout Africa and all over the world in missions on behalf of our nation. We established a foreign affairs department of the nation that dealt with all external affairs in the political, geopolitical, and economic, and social, psychological areas, headed by Prince Asiel, I was his partner. Our children in Israel speak at least 3 languages. Victory. We have also established a successful sports program with many of our teams and individuals and athletes competing at the highest level in Israel and Europe. Our musical artists competed in many competitions and won various musical competitions in Israel and Europe. At the height of development, we operated at least 40 jurisdictions, satellite communities around the world, which fed into the homeland, Israel. We reestablished our biblical high holy days and national observances based upon our Hebrew calendar. These established days are still adhered to and practiced today. We are reminded every day the price. For sometimes we have suffered and are suffering and enduring the lack of having to create our own world without absolute knowledge and information and the lack of an infallible blueprint. Mind you, we must remember that we had to achieve all this and more with COINTELPRO and the security services around the world committed to our demise. I thank you for indulging me. But I felt that you need to hear that because we're talking about trade and commerce. We had our own GDP, gross domestic product, our own GNP, gross national product. And we shipped foods and clothes and jewelry all over the world. I was in Bermuda. I had a container with American Airlines and shipped Black farmers products. They would put them on my container. American Airlines would bring them to Bermuda. I'd process them and sell it to the public in Bermuda. So we've done trade and commerce. We've done all of this. And when they talk about a Black nation or whatever they want to use, we did that. The only problem is we couldn't tell y'all why we was doing it because it wasn't televised. So what I'm saying now with Dell and Sister Christina King, Amita, and all of those who have been an integral part of this thing, the reality of it is that now it's time to televise the revolution. We can do it now. So we thank you for indulging me. And this platform is a very wonderful platform, and I appreciate Del delving into the whole aspect of it, so that we can reason together and move on to. And when I say this, I want y'all to understand this. When we say move on to power, right? A lot of times our vernacular betrays us. And We may say, we're going to do this. Okay. Somebody said we need to build a black nation about high officials said we need to build a black nation about 3 months ago. He said it. I'm saying, well, where was he when we was building the nation? So y'all don't have to go through what we went through. We just created the paradigm. No, all we have to do is just add to it. You don't have to go to Israel. You can go anywhere you want to go. The idea is that the object of a more beautiful and better and inclusive world comes into existence. And that's the key. This is where we are. That's why we left. And now we're able to tell the story. And we are you. You are us. And this is this particular platform has allowed us to expand. And I'm saying it's time to televise a revolution. So anybody doing anything that's progressive, this is the time for this to come out. And I want to say, lastly, this movement, right? It didn't start out as advocacy. This movement came from education, because Kyrie educated us, Ye educated us. You understand? So now we're at this platform because these young brothers, they stood up, but so did Greg Hodges. Long time ago, and he paid the price too, right? Because they marginalized him, and so we got to go all the way back, because everybody has to get their just due. And we're that generation. We're wise enough and strong enough to stand up and celebrate, because we got to create celebrations for all of our people who put their hand to the handle. You understand? When they celebrate Veterans Day, a few years ago, they asked me to come on the radio and talk about Veterans Day. I said, y'all just, all black people in America are veterans. Powerful veterans. So we can speak in the present. We have demonstrated that we have the power to defeat our enemies. Yeah, we got skirmishes and all that kind of stuff going on because we've been at war for 460 years. But we got some blows in enough to say they can be beat. You know what I'm saying? Yeah, it was a community of us, but we represented all the disenfranchised people all over the world. Just to let everybody know that we are winners.
Exactly. We're prisoners of war.
Right.
Still fighting.
That's what I'm saying. And we winning.
That's right.
So no matter what the media posts, it's all about what we and how we present ourselves. Okay. Anybody else? Oh. You didn't want to say? Anybody?
No, I just had a comment about a name. I gave it to her about we was talking about a revolutionary name. Try something new. I think I call it the MGM. We've been going all across the globe as black people. So why shouldn't we be the globe trotters? National, I forgot what it was.
National Globe Trotter Nation.
That's right.
You know what I'm saying?
I'm not sure if you guys can still hear me on the stream. I'm making sure that I can still be in the stream. I'm going to come out of.
I don't have a problem.
I'm going to come out of the Zoom, and I'm going to jump into the stream on this phone. So I had multiple devices going. So excuse me from this one.
Pretty militant also, so. What's my brother that be sitting there saying we look like you?
I got some stuff.
Can everybody hear me?
Yes, I can hear.
Okay.
Yes, I hear you.
Okay. I wonder if you're hearing me from the stream or if you're hearing me from the Zoom.
I believe I'm hearing you from the Zoom here, but there's no sound going at all on the stream.
Yes, that's what I realized. So let me see. Let me see if I can fix it quickly. Let me. Okay, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to close the Zoom. Okay, because it might be interrupting the. The Zoom. The Zoom sound is the sound. That's why I'm closing the Zoom. Okay. So we're ending Zoom. Go back here. Wondering if everybody can hear me here. Can you guys hear me here?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. So I was on the Zoom, and the Zoom sound was occupying my my sound. All right. Just repeat. Everybody can hear me?
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Okay. You're kind of loud. My computer was better. You're kind of low, rather. Okay. So the last thing that I would like us to close out with is just our call to action. I think we have two very important calls to action that to me are crucial, or this meeting was almost for naught. You guys everybody can hear me, right? Can people on can people hear me on the actual StreamYard live, on the YouTube live? Or if you can hear me, just say yes. Let me wave your hand at me. Okay. So call to action number one. And we spoke about it briefly with myself and Prince and Christina. This makes what a movement does actually effectual. It makes people who are watching it say, "Hey, is this thing real? Are we making a difference?" It also puts the pressure on, as Christina was mentioning, our alleged partnerships that are allies that wish to be allies. It puts them in a position of action. And it also brings something that is in its fledgling state to a national forefront. And this call to action is what I believe what is needed for the Dimona community, and to push our, if you will, agenda to the very top of the food chain. A letter needs to be drafted, and a demonstration needs to be put together to present a call to action from our government and from the ambassador of Israel to make sure that those 131 souls in Dimona are given their status as Israeli. And this is a couple of points that I thought a letter like that should contain. It should contain a history similar to what the Prince outlined about those people. And it should also demonstrate that the American taxpayer has been paying their tax dollars and has pledged $38 billion to Israel in the course of the next 10 years. And that if we truly are allies with Israel, why is it that the African American in Israel, who is supposed to be a partner, who's supposed to have two passports, one American, one Israeli, why is no American aid being given to the African American in Israel? And this letter, the intention of this letter, again, a little bit different than what our father in the faith Reverend Sampson says. He says educate first. I say agitate first. It will agitate. It will force people to educate themselves, looking into our foreign policy with Israel, looking into where those tax dollars go, and looking into this Dimona community, who I think the national the national voice or the national mind of the Black populace or the African or the Hebrew or the Afro-Semitic populace of America doesn't know about. It's a letter that says, we want action and we need it right away. That's letter number one. Letter number two, I think it happened right in Chicago by members and community in Chicago. A letter that says, we have issue with the ADL and their position with our faith groups. If you go onto the ADL's website, I believe it's adl.com and or .org, look in their resource section, and you will see that they have outlined numerous members of Hebrew Israelites as a hate group, as extremists. They are targeting our faith groups. No matter what they think about it, they should not be targeting the Hebrew Israelite faith groups, period. And we should ask for the ADL to take those faith groups off their website. And that also can be a partnership by the virtuous Jewish community who says they want to be part and parcel with us, an ally with us. That letter can be CC'd by every member of the Black community and any member of the Jewish community who agrees that the ADL should take the names of Black faith groups off of their website. And that letter should not be mailed. That letter should not be UPS. That letter should be walked over by a conscientious mob crowd of people of singular mindedness towards that agenda. I open up the floor.
The letter will go to the
ADL.
to the ADL office.
And we'll be closing by 7:30. Let's try to close out by 7:30.
Done.
Yeah.
If somebody's speaking, I can't hear you.
No, they were calculating the time. All right, Joe. So you saying that you want people to be inspired to take some of this stuff on their.
Your volume is very low for me, Rev. I'm not sure if everybody else is low, if he finds it low, but your volume is low for me. Let me see if it's me.
Can you hear me better now? Can you hear me better now?
Go ahead.
Can you hear me better now?
That's very low for me. I don't know why. Let me try something with my sound.
Okay, I'm gonna get closer. Is that better?
Okay, I think it is me.
Okay. Cause I was the most.
Yeah,
I'm
but yours always up.
All right, try again.
Yeah, is it better now? Better now?
Yeah, it's me. Go ahead, guys. It's just me. Everybody's saying it's me. Go ahead.
Okay. So what were we saying?
Go ahead.
Oh, I was just gonna say, are you just putting it out there for people to take it upon themselves? Or are you asking this committee to,
Chicago to do one thing.
yeah, that's what I'm saying. I'm saying, is it committee or is it a person? Or for the one in Chicago, what are you asking? Can you hear me, Dale?
I'm sorry. I'm trying to see. I didn't hear you, but go ahead and say it again.
Can you hear me?
I can hear you, but it's very faint. It's something going on with my devices, but it's okay. Go ahead. I can hear you though.
Yeah, that's the ADL.
Say it again.
I said, yeah, that's the ADL.
Oh, it's the 80s.
Look, I was saying on the letters, are you saying that somebody can take it upon themselves to do the letter, or is the letter by committee, or what are you asking?
I think the letter should be framed by a committee and vetted by lawyers, and then taken up the street. And I think it's very time sensitive. I don't think a lot of time should be sat down with it, but let's get some orators on it, some civil rights voices on it, and structure a letter that it comes short of ultimatum, but isn't a request. It's a set of demands based on what we find to be defamation. So an ADL positioning should be: we find it exceptional for a group to be in a position to defame members of the Black community. Based on what we've read on the website, we are very alarmed at the fact that this organization has seemingly investigated members of the public. We also realize that they have a relationship with the FBI. We'd like to know whether or not a court order was ever given to this organization to investigate American citizens. This organization is not part of the law enforcement branches of government, and therefore we find it to be something extremely egregious for a private organization to have this level of ability to surveillance members of the American community, especially the Black community and their faith groups. Something to that extent.
Okay. How much time we got?
And if anybody is listening and hears them, you can type what they're saying on the bus, so I don't have to keep asking questions because my sound is terrible. I might come out and go back here.
Wow. Okay, well, since you can't hear us, we just need to type. I think we just need to go on and close out. Yeah, we're gonna go on and close out, Dale.
Okay.
All right.
So if we're going to close out, let's just scroll through. I'm just going to scroll through any of the questions. If anybody has any questions that are on the stream, there's still 214 people on the stream. If anybody has any questions or any closing remarks from individuals on the stream, you can type it in. I'll put it on the screen, and so individuals who want to speak to it can. This is a very good point too. The Southern Poverty Law Center labeled the Hebrew Israelites a hate group also. So that's another group that probably a letter should be made out to them as well.
Southern Poverty Law Center. Oh, that's great. Name Salam.
Right.
I never even heard of him.
Another person is saying, I'd like to get in contact with the Dimona community as well as the Hebrew community. What is the method for two things? For contact, and I believe that the way that money should be collected for the Dimona community is that Christina and a group that she is organizing should put together this new NGO and utilize that instrument, and also put a member of the Dimona community as one of the trustees on that new NGO. So that scenario will be seamless, and then to figure out what accounting organization will certify or oversee the accounting of that organization annually in that way. So I don't know what you guys feel about, because they need aid immediately. They need approximately $40,000 to $50,000 immediately. We were told last night, so I think it's very important that we make sure that that people have the capacity to give money to that organization ASAP, because they're in a scenario where they need 40 to 50,000 to continue their lawsuit immediately.
Okay, let me give them an email for those who want to talk about it or contact it. I think they can use S as in Sam, ARAMIEL777 at Gmail.
Okay. If you want to put it in the comment section, or if Christina sends it to me, I will link anything to this live too.
Why you
She's
just put
gonna
it right
send
here?
it. She gonna send it.
You gonna send it? You gonna send yours to me?
No, I'm not sending it.
Okay, so I guess we will be talking in the next 24, right? Kristen?
And I apologize, guys. I can't hear anything on your end.
I don't want to keep that way. Sign off first.
Just sign off. Okay, we're closing out. All right.
Okay.
All right.
I'll let you guys come off, and then I'll finish the live. But thank you guys very much, and to everybody in the room, to all that came and all that represented in Chicago. I appreciate you very, very much. I thank you for watching. I thank you for being part of this first conversation. Thank you, Prince, and thank you, Christina. Let us continue in the direction that we're going.
All right. Thank you, dear.
Okay.
Have a good evening.
Let me just answer a couple of questions to those on the live as they come out. Somebody asked the question of how ADL becomes so important that they have to be begged at. We're not begging them. We're telling them, take our faith groups off your website. That's not a beg. That's saying you have no right to have our faith groups on your website. And we're actually instructing them to do so with a legal letter. So we're not begging them. It's not a request. All right. So I just wanted to be clear about that. I'm glad you thought it was insightful. Yeah, the ADL says they represent many Jewish people, but many Jewish people do not agree with the ADL. If you look at my community page, there's an organization or a paper called The Tablet, and the editor wrote a scathing letter that he thinks it's time for the Jewish community to move on from the ADL. And I said it before, Jonathan Greenblatt and the ADL are not good for Jewish people. Yes, people are still there. That's where they were. People are leaving there right now. Are you arriving? But people are there right now. So that's where most of the group is. Thank you, Miss Ann. Yeah, Mariel, those people aren't for their people at the end. That's why we need to have an organization that's for our people, because that's where it all boils down to, right? People are going to take care of their own. And our community needs to have something that can do the same thing. Yes, thank you very much for the people in Chicago. And I'm glad you did not get a hate fest. I'm glad this was not a hate fest. Esrog Bailey. I don't know why you expected a hate fest, but I'm happy that you were surprised. Yes, Miss Mariel. And I don't think there's anything wrong with people advocating for their communities. I said it earlier. The only thing that we have to remember is we are our brother's keeper. So as much as people want to have organizations that focus on their community first, when it comes time to reach across the table to other communities, please remember that you are your brother's keeper. It's a high school. They are in the gym. They are in the gym. I will message somebody and say that you are outside. Let me see if I can do that without losing the feed. But I will message them and let them know that you're outside. Anybody else? I believe it's the gym. I don't know. I don't. It's probably. It looks like it's a small room that they were using, and not the gym. But I'll message them to let them know that you're there. I'm glad you enjoyed the discussion, everybody. I'm going to close it off now. God bless everybody. We're just under 2 hours. I didn't make it. It's 2 hours. So thank you very much for hanging in there. For the 200 and odd people who came in, and for those that'll be watching afterward, we appreciate you very much, and more information is to come. Bye-bye. Thank you.